not as easy or fun as a lot of us think. So the truth is that I do get a little bit burnout by just because pretty much everything that I acquired this year was just, value add. And
Right.
we do boots on the ground. We do go to our team member and allocate the work just because of my nature being an accountant. I always have to see everything. It's hard for me not to
Mm.
look at the financial statement every month. It's hard for me not to balance the checkbook. So I have to see everything and manage the costs to the best ability that I can for our investors.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, Yonah Weiss, today with another incredible guest. Excited to be sharing the Zoom call today with Elsa Nguyen. I messed up your name. I knew I did, but I got it as best as I could. Happy to have you on the show, Elsa. Thanks so much for joining me.
Of course, pleasure is my Yonah. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah. So
Great,
I'd love for our listeners to have a little context, before we get into a little of your backstory. Tell us a little about, who you are and how you got started in the real estate game.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. So my story go back to 1991. That's when I immigrated to the United States at the age of 13.
Oh, wow.
And it was a difficult adjustment, came from poverty, immigrated to this country with zero English and went to school, got a corporate job in accounting and did not like anything about it. So I decided to quit in 2016 and went into real estate because for some reason I just love some real estate in general. So I thought this might be a right move for me. I went into real estate, being a real estate agent. That was somehow fulfilling, but it wasn't there. Sometimes you feel like, yeah, I'm there, but I'm not quite there yet. And then someone came to me in 2018 and asked me, hey, do you want to invest as a passive investor in a development deal?
Oh, really?
And this is the first time that I've heard about investing as a passive investor. So I asked more about that. And the return was great, 25% annualized return. It's a land development deal. I'm like, this is too good to be true. But you know what? This might be a good opportunity. So I dived right in. And my instinct was right. It was too good to be true.
Oh, boy.
Too good of a return. So essentially that project failed. But I learned a lesson, but that also was an eye-opening for me to get into what I'm doing right now, because then I've learned about how syndication work. And from land development, I ventured into apartment syndication because I felt that was a much less, we could potentially mitigate a lot of risk by, buying properties that already have a stream of revenue,
right,
rather than a piece of land. So that kind of led me to where I am right today. And I quit my real estate job almost entirely. I didn't do any deal this year, and I focus 100% on apartment syndication.
Amazing. Wow. Okay. So that's a lot packed in there. I mean, first of all, it's amazing to see people, coming to this country, immigrating with zero English and being able to be successful. It's just so inspiring to so many people. They call it the American dream, but it really is. It's that drive that you see other people succeeding, you see other people doing things, and you learn, you go through struggles. That's for sure. We all have struggles in our lives, but having faced with something like that is extremely hard, especially at that age. I know. I have a 13-year-old at home, and I've had a few teenagers. So it's a hard age, to be kind of thrown into a brand new environment. So
for sure. Yeah, absolutely. But it's the land of opportunity, right? I think a lot of children, I have children in that age too. And a lot of times they don't know any better. So they do take things for granted. Where I came from, I'm like, this is a dream for a lot of people. It's like the American dream is buying a house. But over there in third world country, it's just a dream for them just to be here in America.
Wow.
That's it.
Well, good. I'm glad you took that and running with it. But now you mentioned leaving kind of the accounting world, finance world, that you were working in the corporate world, moving into real estate. and then becoming a real estate broker, and then moving into apartment syndications, having a first exposure to it was failed exposure, right? Was that deal that you did. And that's important because you learn, like you said, you learn from those type of things. But how did you actually, I'm really curious to know how you transitioned and learn more about actively syndicating deals like you're doing right now.
I poke around a little bit in the beginning just to see like, how do I get into this stuff, right? I knew my first deal was failing being a passive investor, but I actually saw the potential in this field and how one would be able to go out and do this by pulling, capital from a few people together and go out and buy. So the concept was there, but I really I didn't know how to get started. I tried to do it on my own for about 6 months. And I'm like, I cannot do this without a mentor. So that's when I started to sign up for a mastermind group. And that helped me. Yeah, it helped me in a tremendous way because all of a sudden I was in a room full of people who was like thinking and feeling and just wanted to be just like me. Whereas before I was all by myself. Like I just didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know where to start. And so the mastermind that I joined was a tremendous help.
Amazing. So tell us a little more about the mastermind, because I know a lot of people listening to this call right now or this podcast are people who are in your situation or were, in a situation similar to you, wanting to learn about actively investing or passively investing for that matter in real estate. How do you go about finding a mastermind? I mean, you just like Google like mastermind. You had any friends that were doing this? Did you go to any events or anything like that led you up to this?
That's a really good question, Yoda. And I really think this is God. Like I didn't know anything about the different mastermind group out there. And I started joining a few Facebook group for multifamily. And there was this one guy, he posted on one of the Facebook group that I was in. And he's like, hey, I'm from Israel and I have investors and I want to invest in the US. So if you partner with me, I can bring investor into your deal. So I'm like, oh, this is sweet, right?
Again, too good to be true, right? No.
Right. So I'm like, okay, I reached out to him and we decided to partner up. I'm like, okay, I'll find deals here. I mean, I came from a real estate background. I know how to find deals. And you got investor from Israel, so let's work together. And long story short, the very first deal that I did was I worked with an Israeli guy and we did a house in Detroit, a fix and flip.
Oh boy.
Didn't work out. But I got some good friendship out of that. And then Yanif, one day, he's like, Elsa, how about we join a multifamily group? I just attended a online boot camp with Rod Cleef.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
And so that was the very first time I've heard of Rod Cleef, right? And he told me he attended the boot camp. He's like, how about we join that group together? So I poke around a little bit. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So we both joined the program. And so that's kind of how it was for me. Yanif, he ended up going in a different direction. He worked with some equity firm there in Israel, and then I stayed in multifamily. We stay as friends, but that's kind of how I found it. Without him, without that organic Facebook post, I probably still, I think at some point in time I will still find it. Sure. But that's how I found the mastermind group that I was in.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And then, okay, how does that work? Like, what do you do in the mastermind? You learn about it, you talk about, you find deals, you underwrite them. I know you had worked as a CFO previously in your previous career, correct? So you have a lot of the finance, you have a lot of the numbers, the accounting side of things probably down. And that's a really valuable lesson. Were you able to use a lot of those skills to kind of translate into the underwriting in the real multifamily deals as well?
Definitely, that helped me in a tremendous way with the accounting background that I've had. So I was able to, thank God for that accounting number background and my real estate background. I was able to at least get, 5 deals, negotiate with broker, put them in a contract and underwrite. And of course, with the help with the mastermind group that I was in, I started to learn how to underwrite and look at numbers. And because of that, I was able to get into, I would be able to put property under contract, right? And then the next thing for me would be to go out and talk to people to see if they want to partner with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the Radcliffe group really came in handy because he has quite a few mastermind students in his group. I think now when I joined him, he only had like 300 people. I think he's at 1,000 now.
Wow. Yeah.
So he grew really fast. And there was just a lot of opportunity for me to network, to talk to people, and brought them into, working with me on the deals that I have put under contract. So it was just all kind of fell into, all the pieces fell into places. So it's just pretty, like I didn't see what was coming.
Sure.
But I just took one step at a time. And ta-da, the next thing I know, we did like 7 or 8 deals just this year, which is amazing.
That's awesome. Multifamily properties, buying 7 or 8 deals. That's incredible.
Exactly. Yeah. And, like when it comes to multifamily, it just, you find a deal, right? You underwrite it. It looks good. You put it in a contract and you just find money to close and then you manage it, of course. Right. So I was lucky with my background. The first 2 pieces came fairly easy for me, finding deals, put it in a contract and then underwrite the numbers. And then we're still learning how to, we always need to raise capital and talk to people and build a database. And that's always a working process. And then manage the property.
Right.
That's it.
And that's probably the hardest part, right? Once
it
you
is
have
the hardest part.
Because that's how, the numbers can work great on Excel, but once you actually have the property, you have to manage it and you have to take care of all the day-to-day. It's a whole different world. So that hopefully, is that something that you are participating in an active basis as well? Or do you have other partners that come in the deal that manage or do the asset management? So the question I was asking you, and maybe your editors can kind of splice this together. I don't know where you got in your explanation, but the last thing that I said, I remember is, the asset management, once you actually acquire the property, that's probably one of the hardest parts. Is that something that you are learning and doing as well more actively, or do you have other partners that are filling that role?
You are 100% absolutely right. A lot of people who has not tasted the fruit of asset management, they all want to be in that role.
Right. And it's all fun until you do it, right?
Exactly. And I totally agree with you. It is so difficult because you have to deal with so many elements, right? Unless you have your own property management company, which you will have some sort of control over it. But it's hard because, depending on where you are, we cannot control, taking especially the properties that I've been focusing on was like value add. So taking a property from 50% occupancy to 90% alone is very challenging. And then now we have people to come and work and manage all of that aspect, a lot of renovation, a lot of rehab. And so it's not as easy or fun as a lot of us think. So the truth is that I do get a little bit burnout because pretty much everything that I acquired this year was just, value add. Right. And we do boots on the ground. We do go to our team member and allocate the work. Just because of my nature being an accountant, I always have to see everything. It's hard for me not to look at the financial statement every month. It's hard for me not to balance the checkbook, Right. So I have to have to see everything and manage the costs to the best ability that I can for our investors.
Sure.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a very challenging part, very challenging job.
Challenging, but rewarding, right? You have the business, and if you can turn it around, and it sounds like you did buy some, more relatively distressed properties. You're talking about taking from 50% occupancy. That's a big challenge. And turning a property like that around can also turn around, a handsome profit, which will, if done properly, will bring your investors back to come back for more.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, the investor will get a pretty, hefty returns. But the process of taking the property from a class, a D or C to a B is a process. It takes time. It does take time, but you're absolutely right. It is very rewarding. It's just, when you see the transformation, it's just something, to me, it's just so rewarding to see.
All right.
And it's so that our investors.
Oh, amazing. What do you see going forward? I mean, to acquire 7 or 8 properties together with partners, okay? Obviously, we're not saying you did this all on your own, clearly. There were partners involved, but to do that in 1 year, I mean, how do you see yourself going forward in scaling? Is it you're still in acquisition mode, or is it let's really focus on getting these properties turned around and getting these, where they need to be before you go forward? Or I'm just curious, what's your goal and plan going forward in the next year or two?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, Yona. So I'm still working on acquisition, but I'm also working on another plan to shift it more toward capital raising, to be a capital partner with other people rather than focusing on the operation part.
Right.
In the meantime, everything is a transition, right? So I purchased my first California property and I really like it. I live here. I know everyone's scared of California. I see the potentials here. And it is another major fix and flip. But since I live here, I don't feel like it's a lot of work. Does it make sense? Know the people, I'm the boots on the ground.
Yeah.
I like it. I like going there. I could feel it. I can touch it. It's just, I hold it dear to my heart. And I want to do more of this. So there's smaller acquisition here in California, fix and flip. But in the meantime, Garrison and I, we just decided to merge our company, and we just started a new company called investNow Capital. So investNow Capital will focus more on fundraising capital and instead of the operation. So that's kind of the new direction that we're heading toward in the next few years.
That's great. And I think it's important, to be able to shift and realize, what your strengths are, what you could bring to the table. And don't necessarily think, you have to do everything. You have to do every part of the deal. There's so much opportunity out there. And I think that's awesome that you guys have kind of taken that role, seeing what you can do with it and moving in that direction. I think you'll have a lot of success because, if you have great investors that want to come back and more deals, there are a lot of deals out there and people are, look for capital. And I think is always a big challenge. What's the hardest thing? Is it to find deals or is it to find capital for the deals? Right? It's like the chicken and egg.
Yeah, I totally hear you. And then also there's just a lot of, we were able to enjoy that very low interest rate for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And even if you buy a property and you overpay a little bit for it, but due to the low interest rate, we still could make it work. But the reality is that that's not going to be the case anymore. So I was thinking, in order to best serve my investors, is that I would be able to leverage every dollar that I could by working with a strong operator who can then leverage their experience to get a better interest rate because of their track records, right? They may be vertically integrated, so they have their own property management company. That also helps us save money. Mm-hmm. And by putting together a fund, I could diversify, mitigate that risk by not just investing in one property, but in multiple properties. So our investors don't have to if something happened in that one particular property, their money is well leveraged. So this is kind of the direction that I'm thinking and heading. And I think that will best serve our investors in the futures.
That's great. That's a smart move. Invest next. Is that what we said? Invest
now.
Invest now. Sorry. Invest now capital, right?
Invest now capital. There you go.
Let's do it. Okay. That's really the call to action, for a name of a company.
That's right.
Someone's Googling, where can I invest now? And I Google, invest now. There you go. That's what it is. You got to use your SEO on your website, invest now. There you go.
All right. Yep.
That's awesome. I want to transition now to what we call the final four, Elsa. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests. First question for you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
Selling fish in the market.
Yeah.
I did mention to you that I came from a third world country and my father was a fisherman. And I remember 7, 8 years old, he would go to the sea and catch fish, and I would take those to the flea market and sell them. And I was horrible at that. Like I would sit there and nobody buy my fish. I remember, maybe because I was too young and people really looked down on me, but people would go to the lady next to me and would buy it from them, even though she was more expensive than she would buy it from me. So I'm like, what's wrong with me? I couldn't sell anything. Wow. My older sister, a couple of years older than me, on the other hand, she was really good at that. So anyway, that was the worst job because every time I had to go to the market and help my mom sell those fishes, I always came back to the house with a basket full of fish. So I did not enjoy that job at all. And you smell bad. And, it didn't sit well with me. So yeah, and then I had some other odd job, but if I have to go back, that's probably the one job that I never want to do again.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it. Yeah, fish market, I think for most people would be the worst job ever. Yeah, I've been to the fish market. I know what
Yeah, you look. I probably look like one. I smell like one, and it's just not a fun place to be
for
at
sure.
all. But that was my
Wow.
first sales job,
There you
really.
go. Well, you learn really quickly what you don't want to do. And so figure that out
Exactly.
quickly. All right. So second question for you is what is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
I read a lot of books, and there's so many great books out there. How to Win Friends and Influence People, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And during COVID, I stumbled upon a book by accident. It's called The Game of Life and How to Play It. Very small, like 30 pages book. And that changed my life.
Wow.
And that book was written I guess, in the 1800s or 1900s. And she focused on the power of the words. Like you manifest what you say. It's all start with our thinking, our thoughts, and it come out from our mouth. And whatever that we release will fulfill itself. And she back it up with biblical verses, with like scripture. I'm like, I never saw it that way. I was taught like, you should just be content with what you have. Don't ask for more. That was just the teaching that I was taught growing up. And this woman proved that whole belief was wrong.
Wow.
So I have to say that book really changed my life in 2020 during COVID when I found that. And I believe that really propelled me to where I am today, because it's really shifted my whole thinking. Like I used to think I cannot do that. Yes, I can do that. It's all stuck in my mind. I need to change that. I have to see that I can achieve that before the reality kick in. You have to see the success in our mind first.
Right.
So yeah, the book called How to Win the Game of Life and How to Play It.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's actually the first time I've ever heard of that book, certainly on this show. So we'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And but the premise of it is something that I hold very, very near and dear to my heart also, and live that. But so I'm really interested in checking that out and just seeing that, especially, given biblical scripture back, to source a lot of the concepts. That to me is always powerful, because you're talking about the word of God. You can't really go wrong when you're dealing with that. And oftentimes it seems abstract, or we don't know how to process it. But when you have books that understand it and understand, what's really going on in those words and how to apply it practically to your life, that's what I love. Those are the types of books I love. So definitely going to check that one out. Appreciate you bringing that up. So third question, what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I really want to get better at sharing the capital raising. As I say, that's the one area that I want to grow on. But a lot of that just boiled down to us able to share how good real estate investment is, right? It's not a sale job. It's not trying to convince people to invest with us or anything, but you are the cost expert. We all know that.
Right.
And just as simple as like explain to them how depreciation works goes a long way. How I could save your money, your tax dollars by looking into real estate investment. So just to be able to release that and educate people is one of the skills that I really want to really like emphasize on. I mean, I have to do the study myself, because in this career, we have to keep reading and stay on top of everything, right? In order to transfer that knowledge to our investors. So that is something that I'm working on every day, and I'm hoping to get better and better every day at that skill.
That's great. Awesome. Well, it's definitely a skill, definitely an important one, especially for your business. So hope to keep it going. That's pretty ambitious of you. So keep it going. And let's just move to the fourth and final question, which is, what does success mean to you?
Success to me means happy. So it doesn't matter if I have a lot of money, a little money, I have to be happy and content with what I have. So not happy as, oh, I'm so happy I'm going out and party tonight, but happy in terms of contentment. You know what I mean? Like just be where we are at that very moment, regardless of how little or how much you have. Right. So to me, that's success.
Wow. Okay. I mean, so that's huge. That's really everything. I mean, being happy, and now we have to define what happy is, but
exactly. And that's different for everyone,
Exactly.
That's very different in different season of life. Sometimes when we are a parent, happy means just, children happy, right?
Yeah.
Or when we are working on a project, happy means we take it from point A to point Z and able to fulfill the promise that we had, told our investors. So that's happiness.
Yeah, listen, there's many different levels. Absolutely.
Exactly.
There's so many levels.
So to me, that would be success, is to be able to keep our promises, do things with integrity, and just be happy, content wherever we are.
Awesome. Love it. Love the answer. Thank you so much, Elsa. It's been a pleasure. Last and finally, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you if they want to?
So as I mentioned earlier, our website, investnowcapital.com, or I am also on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and those are the two social media sites that I'm most, active on.
Okay. Well, we will make sure to put all that in the show notes, and appreciate you taking the time out today and coming on the show, and looking forward to seeing your continued success. And, hopefully we'll be able to do this again sometime.
Same to you, Yona. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your podcast today.
All right. And to our listeners, thank you guys for joining us once again all the way until the end. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.